Alyssa Brown had always been different. Not the kind of different people admired, just the kind they didn't understand. While other women her age chased attention, Alyssa chased peace. She believed peace was the highest kind of luxury. She was 27, a data analyst in a small tech firm in downtown Atlanta, earning just enough to pay her rent and help her mom back home in Decatur. But despite her modest life, she was happy. Her circle of friends, Tamika, Renee, and Brielle, were the kind of women who made life look like a photo shoot. Every brunch came with designer bags, fake lashes, and louder laughter than the jokes deserved. They didn't hate Alyssa. They just didn't get her. "Girl, why you always in flats?" Tamika teased one Friday night as they prepared to go out. "We trying to catch rich men, not Uber drivers." Alyssa smiled softly. "Maybe I'm not trying to catch anyone." Renee laughed. "Then what you doing in Atlanta? This city's about chasing bags and men, baby." Alyssa tucked her braids behind her ear. "Maybe I'm just chasing peace." They rolled their eyes in unison. Peace didn't trend on social media. Alyssa had a way of giving without expecting anything back. When Brielle lost her job, Alyssa let her stay in her apartment rent-free for 2 months. When Tamika's boyfriend ghosted her, Alyssa took her out for dinner and listened to her cry till midnight. When Renee's mother fell sick, Alyssa sent money she couldn't spare. But kindness often becomes invisible when people take it for granted. One afternoon, Alyssa arrived at their favorite cafe, only to overhear her friends whispering before she reached the table. "She too nice," Tamika said. "Like she's auditioning for Mother Teresa, the movie." Renee giggled. "Right. Always saving everybody. That's why she's still single." Alyssa pretended she didn't hear. She just smiled, ordered her coffee, and asked, "How's everyone doing today?" Her calm irritated them more than her goodness ever did. Life didn't give Alyssa much, but it always gave her enough. Her job paid modestly, yet her boss trusted her more than anyone else. Her landlord loved her punctual rent. Even strangers found comfort in her smile. One rainy evening, after a long day at work, she stopped at a small diner to wait out the storm. She sat near the window, sipping hot tea, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. A man entered, tall, brown-skinned, with a quiet authority that filled the room. He shook rain from his coat, scanned the seats, and finally sat 2 tables away. When Alyssa dropped her purse, coins rolling across the floor, he knelt to pick them up. "Let me help you with that," he said warmly. "Thank you," she replied, embarrassed. "I'm always dropping things." He smiled. "Then it's a good thing I walked in when I did. I'm Ethan." "Alyssa," she said shyly. "Nice to meet you." They shared a brief, genuine smile, 2 gentle souls meeting by accident but meant by destiny. Over the next few weeks, Ethan kept returning to that diner. Sometimes with coffee, sometimes just to talk. He loved that Alyssa never asked about his job or his wealth, because if she had, she would have learned that Ethan Parker was one of the youngest billionaires in America, owner of Parker Technologies. But Alyssa only asked about things that mattered. "How's your heart?" she asked once. He blinked. "My heart?" "Yes," she said softly. "Not your schedule, not your business, your heart." He smiled. "No one's asked me that before." They talked about books, faith, kindness, and laughter. And every time he left, he felt lighter, like his soul had exhaled. When Alyssa's friends spotted her being dropped off by a black Rolls-Royce one afternoon, chaos began. "Girl!" Tamika shouted. "Who is that man?" "That's money on wheels." Alyssa laughed awkwardly. "Just someone I met. A friend." "A friend." Renee smirked. "A friend who drives a Rolls? Please. You better lock that man down before the city girls find him." Alyssa rolled her eyes playfully. "He's not about money, trust me." They exchanged looks behind her back. Oh, she's in love already, Brielle whispered. But later, when Ethan invited Alyssa to dinner at a quiet restaurant, no photographers, no show-off energy, she realized what set him apart. He valued the same things she did: simplicity, peace, and realness. Ethan and Alyssa began dating quietly. No social media posts, no flashy gifts. He brought her flowers from his garden, not the florist. She cooked him dinner instead of requesting luxury restaurants. "You're not like anyone I've met," Ethan said one night, sitting on her tiny balcony. "You make me feel human again." Alyssa smiled. Maybe that's the point. Sometimes life needs less shine and more soul. He reached for her hand. "I think you're the most beautiful soul I've ever known." That night, she realized love doesn't need luxury. It needs truth. It wasn't until months later that Alyssa discovered Ethan's true identity. She walked into his office unexpectedly, bringing lunch like she always did. But this time, the receptionist's reaction gave it away. "You're here for Mr. Parker?" "The Ethan Parker." Alyssa blinked. "Wait. Parker Technologies, Ethan Parker." The receptionist nodded with awe. "Yes, ma'am." "You didn't know." Alyssa froze. Her boyfriend, the man who held her hand while they ate $5 diner meals, was one of the richest men in the country. That evening, she confronted him. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan looked sincere. "Because I wanted to know if you'd love me for who I was, not what I had." Her eyes softened. "You didn't need to hide it, Ethan. I already chose you." On their one-year anniversary, Ethan took Alyssa back to the diner where they first met. The same seat, the same table, the same quiet rain tapping on the glass. He slid a small velvet box across the table. "Alyssa Brown," he said, voice trembling slightly, "you taught me that peace is richer than any empire. Will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." He smiled, slipping the diamond ring on her finger, a ring not to impress, but to honor. The engagement news spread like wildfire. Alyssa's friends couldn't believe it. "Hold up," Tamika gasped. "You're marrying Ethan Parker? As in the billionaire?" Alyssa blushed. "Yes." Renee crossed her arms. "Girl, what did you do? Teach him how to pray." Alyssa chuckled softly. "No. I just loved him like a human being." Their laughter faded. Envy crept in where friendship once lived. They mocked her behind her back, calling her lucky, boring, and fake humble. But deep down, they knew she had something money couldn't buy: grace. The wedding was elegant but intimate. A garden ceremony filled with soft jazz, white roses, and sunlight slipping through oak trees. Alyssa wore a satin gown without glitter or diamonds. Her smile was the brightest jewel there. As she walked down the aisle, Ethan's eyes filled with emotion. "You look like peace," he whispered when she reached him. "And you look like home," she replied. Her friends watched from the second row, stunned by the love in Ethan's eyes. They whispered again, but this time, not out of mockery. Out of realization. The girl they once pitied had become the woman they envied. After marriage, Alyssa refused to sit idle in wealth. She founded a non-profit organization, Hearts of Grace Foundation, to support single mothers and youth education. She spent her mornings at meetings and her afternoons at community centers. Ethan admired her devotion. "You're the only woman I know who married a billionaire and still wakes up at 6 a.m. to volunteer." She laughed. Love doesn't cancel purpose. Their home became a place of warmth, prayer, and laughter. Every corner echoed with gratitude. Months later, Tamika reached out. Her business had collapsed, and her boyfriend had left. She needed help. Without hesitation, Alyssa sent support. Not just money, but hope. "You don't owe me this," Tamika said tearfully when they met. Alyssa smiled. "I don't give because I owe." I give because I remember. Renee followed soon after, apologizing for the mockery. You always had what we wanted, Alyssa. We just couldn't see it. Alyssa hugged her. You still can. Life isn't a competition, it's a journey. Years passed. The Parkers became one of Atlanta's most loved couples, not for their wealth, but for their impact. Alyssa's foundation expanded nationwide. Schools bore her name. Scholarships honored her values. During an interview, a journalist asked, "Mrs. Parker, what's the secret behind your success?" She smiled. Be kind, even when kindness costs you, because grace always repays with interest. One evening, Alyssa sat on her porch watching the sunset. Ethan joined her, resting his hand on hers. You ever think about how far you've come? He asked. She nodded softly. Sometimes I do. But I still remember the girl who was mocked for being too kind. He smiled. That kindness built everything we have. She looked at him, eyes glistening. I guess sometimes the quiet ones win. When the same cafe where they once gathered held a women's event, Alyssa attended as a guest speaker. Tamika, Renee, and Brielle sat among the audience, listening. She ended her speech with words that silenced the room. Never let the world shame you for being kind. They'll laugh now, but kindness always wins in the end. The crowd rose in applause. Her old friends wiped their eyes. Ethan stood at the back, smiling proudly at the woman who turned mockery into motivation. Success came quietly at first, then suddenly like a wave. Magazines wanted Alyssa's story, schools invited her to speak, and social media began to call her America's Grace. But fame has a way of stretching the soul. Some morning she'd wake up to find articles written about her, half true, half invented. Billionaire's wife turned saint. From broke to blessed, the miracle woman of Atlanta. She would smile faintly, knowing the truth was simpler. I didn't turn saint, she'd tell Ethan. I just never stopped being human. He would kiss her forehead and say, that's exactly why they love you. Still, sometimes she missed her old life, the small apartment, the diner coffee, the quiet rain. Fame was loud, and Alyssa loved quiet. Alyssa's mother, Mrs. Brown, still lived in the little house in Decatur. She refused to move, even when Ethan offered to buy her a mansion. I like where the Lord found me, she said with a laugh. One weekend, Alyssa visited alone. The two women sat on the porch, drinking sweet tea as the cicadas sang in the evening air. Mama, Alyssa said softly, did you ever think life would turn out like this? Her mother smiled. I didn't think, I prayed. You always had a pure heart. The world may not understand kindness, but God does. Tears filled Alyssa's eyes. I just wish people could see that peace is possible. Her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. Then keep being the example, baby. Don't change because life got louder. That night, Alyssa wrote in her journal, stay humble, stay kind, stay real. Even when the world claps, don't stop listening for God's whisper. 1 year later, Ethan faced a major business crisis. A cyber attack hit Parker Technologies, threatening millions of users. The media exploded. Investors panicked. Lawsuits loomed. Ethan barely slept. He grew quiet, distant, and heavy-eyed. Alyssa noticed. One night, she found him in his office, staring at the city lights. Talk to me, she whispered. He sighed. Everything I built could fall apart, Alyssa. The press, the pressure. She walked closer, placed her hand on his chest. Then let it. We'll rebuild. What matters isn't what we lose, it's who we stay after losing it. He looked at her like a man seeing hope for the first time. You always know what to say, he murmured. She smiled. I just say what peace sounds like. By the end of that year, Ethan's company recovered. Investors returned. And he told reporters, "My wife didn't save the company. She saved me." With success returning, so did old faces. Tamika, now divorced and struggling, began posting photos tagging Alyssa's name online. Renee started calling, wanting to collaborate on charity projects. Brielle, who had once laughed behind Alyssa's back, sent a message, "Girl, I miss you. Let's catch up." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want to reopen those doors?" Alyssa nodded slowly. "I can forgive without forgetting." When they finally met, the reunion was awkward. The women were nervous, humbled, unsure how to act around the friend they once mocked. "I never thought I'd say this," Tamika said softly, "but I envy your peace more than your money." Alyssa smiled gently. "Peace is free, Tamika. It just costs pride." Renee wiped a tear. "We were cruel to you. You didn't deserve that." Alyssa reached out and held their hands. "I wasn't trying to win against you. I was trying to win within me." The cafe grew silent. For the first time, they saw Alyssa not as the lucky one, but as the wise one. Years passed, and the Hearts of Grace Foundation grew into a nationwide movement. Alyssa's programs funded schools, women's shelters, and mentorship for young girls from disadvantaged neighborhoods. She insisted on visiting every community at least once a year, hugging the children, talking to the mothers, praying with families. During one visit, a teenage girl named Liana approached her and said, "Mrs. Parker, they laugh at me because I'm too quiet. They say I'll never be popular." Alyssa smiled, recognizing herself in the girl. "Don't chase noise, Liana. When your heart is right, the world will come looking for your peace." The girl hugged her tightly. "I want to be like you someday." Alyssa whispered back, "Be better." "That's the goal." One evening, the mayor of Atlanta called to inform Alyssa she had been selected for a humanitarian award. Ethan beamed with pride. "You're finally being recognized, love." But Alyssa shook her head gently. "I'm not doing it for awards. I'm doing it for impact." At the award ceremony, when handed the golden plaque, she spoke humbly. "They used to call me too kind, too soft, too naive. But kindness built my destiny. So if anyone here feels too gentle for this world, don't harden, just keep shining. The world eventually learns to see your light." The room erupted in applause. Even her old friends stood and clapped, their eyes wet with pride and regret. Fame wasn't always kind. Some tabloids began twisting Alyssa's image, accusing her of faking humility, of strategic charity. One morning, a viral post claimed she was using her foundation for tax evasion. Ethan was furious. "They can't talk about you like this." Alyssa touched his arm calmly. "Let them. Truth always outlives lies." Weeks later, the IRS publicly cleared her of all accusations. The same reporters who tried to stain her name wrote glowing apologies. When Ethan asked how she stayed so calm through it all, she simply said, "Because storms can't drown a woman who learned to breathe underwater." 10 years after their wedding, Alyssa launched a scholarship program named the Quiet Dreamer Initiative. Its purpose, to support students who were overlooked, not because they lacked talent, but because they lacked loudness. During the launch, she spoke from her heart. "Not every flower grows in the sun. Some bloom quietly in the shade. Those are the ones I'm here for." Ethan stood beside her, holding her hand, whispering, "You're still that same diner girl." She smiled. "And you're still the man who picked up my dropped coins." One summer, Alyssa returned to her old neighborhood to visit the diner where she first met Ethan. The same waitress, older now, recognized her instantly. "Lord, look at you. The whole world knows your name now." Alyssa laughed softly. "I'm still the same girl who loved the rain." They sat in the same booth. The waitress asked, Do you miss the old days? Alyssa thought for a moment. Sometimes. But peace isn't a place, it's a person you become. When she stepped outside, it began to drizzle. Ethan, waiting in the car, looked up and smiled. Rain again, huh? She nodded. Just like the first day. He held her hand. Then maybe it's God's way of reminding us how it all began. Years later, Alyssa stood on a stage at the grand opening of the Grace Academy, a school she built for underprivileged girls. Hundreds of students filled the hall, their eyes wide with hope. She looked over at Ethan, gray now at the temples, and smiled. Then she turned to the crowd and spoke the words that defined her life. The world once mocked me for being too kind. But kindness gave me everything I ever needed. Don't let laughter stop you from loving. Because in the end, grace always wins. As applause thundered, she felt her mother's spirit beside her, proud and smiling. Alyssa Parker became a legend, not because she was perfect, but because she was proof. Proof that kindness isn't weakness. Proof that generosity multiplies. Proof that peace is power. When she looked in the mirror, she still saw the same quiet girl, the one who once sat in a diner with rain in her hair and hope in her heart. The girl they mocked had become the woman the world needed. Be kind even when they call you foolish. Be humble even when they call you weak. Because someday, the same people will call you wise.